Emily Parker thought she had escaped her obsessed ex, Ryan. But when threats turned deadly, her father Mark was forced to make a life-changing decision, one that would shatter their peaceful world forever. Emily Parker's life seemed like a dream come true. At 22 years old, she was on the brink of graduating from college, balancing her studies with a part-time job at a cozy local bookstore. She was known for her warm smile and kind heart, the kind of person who made friends easily and had a bright future ahead. Her parents, Mark and Susan, were proud of her accomplishments and supported her every step of the way. Emily's relationship with Ryan, a classmate she had been seeing for about a year, appeared stable and loving to those around them. Ryan was charming and attentive, always making sure Emily felt special, but beneath the surface, things were not as perfect as they seemed. What no one knew was that Ryan's affection had begun to twist into something darker. It started slowly, extra texts during class, frequent calls late at night, and sudden visits to her apartment when she hadn't invited him. Emily tried to brush it off as over-eagerness, hoping that time would calm him down. But with every passing day, Ryan's behavior grew more controlling and obsessive. He wanted to know where she was at all times, who she was talking to, and even became upset if she spent too much time with her friends or family. Emily began feeling trapped in a relationship that was supposed to bring joy but instead brought anxiety and fear. Mark noticed the changes in his daughter almost immediately. Once vibrant and carefree, Emily now seemed anxious and withdrawn. Her usual laughter was replaced with silence, and the sparkle in her eyes faded. At family dinners, she barely touched her food, and when Mark asked if everything was okay, she would force a smile and say she was fine. But Mark's instincts told him otherwise. One afternoon, while helping Emily with her groceries, he caught a glimpse of a bruised wrist hidden beneath her sleeve. When he asked gently, Emily quickly changed the subject, but the seed of worry was planted deep in Mark's heart. Emily confided in her best friend about Ryan's increasingly possessive behavior. The friend urged her to tell her parents, but Emily was scared. She didn't want to cause a scene or make Ryan angry. Her fear was not unfounded. Ryan had started sending unsettling messages whenever Emily tried to distance herself. Some messages hinted at despair, others at anger, and a few were simply threats wrapped in twisted love. Emily was caught in a storm of emotions. Love, fear, guilt, and frustration all tangled together. Mark struggled with how best to protect his daughter. He wanted to confront Ryan, to warn him to stay away, but Emily begged him not to. She feared that any confrontation might escalate the situation. Mark respected her wishes, but began researching ways to keep Emily safe. He reached out to the campus security office, only to be told that without clear proof of harassment, their hands were tied. Frustration and helplessness gnawed at him. One evening, Emily stayed late at the bookstore, her hands trembling as she locked the doors. Mark waited anxiously in the car, eyes scanning the empty street. When Emily finally emerged, she looked over her shoulder nervously. Mark's heart ached. He realized that their once peaceful life was unraveling, and the man his daughter loved had become a threat they couldn't ignore. The invisible chains of obsession were tightening around Emily, and Mark vowed to do whatever it took to break them before it was too late. Ryan's obsession with Emily grew more intense as weeks passed, turning from unsettling to downright dangerous. At first, his actions seemed like desperate attempts to hold on to a relationship he didn't want to lose. He sent flowers to her apartment, called her repeatedly, and showed up unexpectedly at places she visited. But soon, those gestures became darker signs of his inability to accept rejection. Emily tried to keep her distance, changing her phone number and blocking him on social media, but Ryan always found a way to reach her. His messages went from sweet apologies to demands, and finally, to threats. He warned her that she couldn't escape him, and if she tried, there would be consequences. Emily's friends noticed the change in her. She stopped going out as much, stopped sharing her daily life online, and often appeared scared even in familiar surroundings. Mark watched helplessly as Ryan's stalking escalated. One afternoon, Emily came home visibly shaken, telling her father about an incident on campus. Ryan had waited outside her lecture hall for hours, refusing to leave even after security asked him to go. The police were called, but Ryan claimed he was just there to talk, and without proof of harassment, they couldn't detain him. It was a frustrating dead end that left Emily feeling exposed and vulnerable. Things worsened when Emily started receiving anonymous letters. They were crude, filled with angry messages and threats, warning her not to break Ryan's heart. Mark was furious and frightened. He wanted to report the letters, but Emily insisted on keeping it quiet. She was afraid that involving the police might provoke Ryan further or worse, put her family in danger. Late one night, Mark discovered a chilling message on Emily's phone, a text from Ryan threatening to harm himself if she didn't respond. The words were desperate and frightening, revealing how deeply Ryan's obsession had consumed him. Mark tried to reassure Emily, telling her that Ryan needed help, but also that they needed to stay safe. Emily was torn between compassion and fear, unsure of how to navigate the situation. The family's once peaceful home grew tense with worry. Mark installed additional locks and security cameras, hoping to deter Ryan's attempts to get closer. Susan, Emily's mother, tried to keep the atmosphere calm, but the strain was clear. Emily's college grades slipped, and she stopped making future plans, caught in the shadow of Ryan's relentless pursuit. Despite everything, Emily tried to maintain a sense of normalcy. She kept working at the bookstore, spent time with friends, and took long walks to clear her mind. But Ryan's presence lurked in every corner of her life, a dark cloud that refused to dissipate. Mark reached out to a lawyer and a counselor for advice on how to handle stalking cases, but the legal process was slow and complicated. The community around Emily was divided. Some sympathized with Ryan, seeing him as a troubled young man struggling with rejection, while others warned of the dangers of obsession and the need for protective measures. Emily felt isolated, caught between public opinion and her private fears. Mark's patience wore thin as he watched the man his daughter once trusted turn into a threat. He tried to warn Ryan through mutual acquaintances to stay away, but the messages were ignored. Ryan's obsession had become a ticking time bomb, and no one knew when or where it might explode. The family's hope for a peaceful resolution was fading fast, and the sense of danger grew with every passing day. Emily made the difficult decision to completely cut Ryan out of her life. She changed her phone number, stopped using her usual social media accounts, and moved to a new apartment in a quieter part of town. She hoped that by putting distance between them, she could finally escape the suffocating grip of Ryan's obsession. But no matter how far she moved or how many precautions she took, Ryan's shadow seemed to follow her everywhere. Ryan grew increasingly desperate. He began monitoring Emily's social media through fake profiles, posting cryptic and threatening messages that only she could understand. Friends noticed how tense Emily had become, how she flinched at sudden noises or locked doors multiple times before feeling safe. Despite the new apartment's security system and cameras Mark installed, Emily still felt vulnerable, as if Ryan was always just one step away. One night, while Emily was out with friends, Ryan broke into her apartment. He didn't harm anything physically, but left behind a chilling reminder of his intrusion, personal items he had taken during previous visits and notes, warning Emily not to run away again. The violation was more than physical. It shattered Emily's sense of safety and peace. She felt exposed and terrified, knowing that Ryan had crossed a boundary he shouldn't have. Mark was furious and scared. The police were called again, but once more, without direct evidence of a threat or physical harm, Ryan couldn't be arrested. The legal system seemed powerless against this invisible menace, stalking Emily's every move. Mark's frustration grew into desperation. Watching his daughter live in fear, feeling trapped in her own life, was unbearable. As Ryan's actions escalated, Mark realized that the authorities might not be able to protect Emily. He started tracking Ryan himself, using information from social media and contacts to find out where Ryan was hiding. He discovered Ryan had been staying in a remote cabin outside the city, a place isolated from anyone who might interfere. Mark debated whether to involve the police or take matters into his own hands. The protective instinct of a father fighting for his daughter's safety was growing too strong to ignore. Emily begged her father to be careful, warning him not to provoke Ryan. She feared that if Mark confronted Ryan directly, it could lead to violence. But Mark's resolve was firm. Every sleepless night, every fear-filled glance from Emily fueled his determination. He could no longer stand by while his daughter's life was controlled by a dangerous obsession. Meanwhile, Ryan's mental state deteriorated. His messages became more erratic and threatening, and those closest to him noticed the change. Some tried to intervene, but Ryan pushed them away, consumed by his fixation on Emily. The man who had once seemed charming and normal was now a ticking time bomb of anger and desperation. The stage was set for a confrontation no one wanted but everyone feared. Mark prepared himself for what might come, knowing that this could change their lives forever. The line between justice and revenge blurred in his mind as he waited for the moment when protecting Emily meant crossing the very line he never thought he would. The nightmare they had been living was about to reach its breaking point. Late one evening, Mark drove out to the remote cabin where he had learned Ryan was hiding. The sun had just set, and the sky was darkening, casting long shadows over the quiet woods. Mark's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and determination. He knew confronting Ryan was dangerous, but the thought of his daughter living in constant terror made the risk seem necessary. He parked a short distance away and cautiously approached the small, isolated cabin, every sound amplified in the still night air. Inside, Ryan was restless and angry. His obsession had twisted his mind into a dark place where logic and reason no longer mattered. When Mark knocked on the door, Ryan's eyes flashed with a mix of rage and desperation. He wasn't the charming young man anyone had once known. He was volatile and unpredictable. The confrontation quickly escalated as Ryan accused Mark of trying to ruin his life and vowed that Emily would never be safe without him. Mark tried to reason with Ryan, warning him to leave Emily alone and get help. But Ryan's obsession drowned out any chance of peaceful dialogue. The situation grew tense and dangerous in a matter of minutes. Ryan lunged toward Mark with a knife he had hidden, forcing Mark to defend himself. In the struggle that followed, Mark managed to wrest the knife away, but the fight didn't end there. The cabin echoed with the sounds of their struggle, grunts, thuds, and desperate cries. In a moment of self-defense, Mark struck Ryan, and the young man collapsed to the floor, motionless. Mark froze, overwhelmed by shock and disbelief at what had just happened. He quickly called the police, explaining the situation with shaking hands. When officers arrived, they found Ryan dead and Mark visibly shaken but cooperative. The investigation that followed was intense. Authorities sifted through evidence, piecing together Ryan's history of stalking, threats, and harassment. Witnesses came forward to describe Ryan's obsessive behavior and Emily's fear. The story that emerged painted a complex picture: a young woman trapped by an unhealthy fixation, a father pushed to the edge by desperation, and a tragic ending neither side wanted. Mark faced serious questions from investigators and the public alike. Some called him a hero who saved his daughter from a dangerous stalker. Others accused him of taking justice into his own hands. The courtroom became a battleground where legal experts debated the limits of self-defense and parental protection. Throughout the trial, Emily stood by her father, grateful for his actions but haunted by the violence that tore their lives apart. The media coverage sparked widespread discussion about stalking, obsession, and the failures of the legal system to protect victims. It became clear that Ryan's death was not just about one man's actions, but about the dangers many people face when love turns into obsession. In the end, Mark was cleared of wrongdoing. The court recognized the threat Ryan posed and the desperate situation that led to the fatal confrontation. But even with the legal verdict, the emotional scars remained. Emily and Mark both struggled to move forward, carrying the weight of what had happened. Their story served as a chilling reminder of how quickly obsession can escalate into violence, and how far a parent might go to protect their child. It was a tragedy born from love and fear, a tale that left a lasting impact on everyone who heard it. The nightmare was over, but the shadows it cast would linger for years to come. After the court's decision, life for Emily and Mark entered a complicated new chapter. Though Mark was legally cleared of any wrongdoing, the emotional toll of the events was far from over. The courtroom drama had brought some relief, but also opened old wounds that would take time to heal. The community-AS reaction was mixed. Some saw Mark as a protective father who had done what was necessary, while others debated whether violence was ever justified, no matter the circumstances. Emily struggled with guilt and trauma. Losing Ryan, even under such threatening conditions, left her conflicted. She didn't want to see Ryan as a monster because once he had been someone she cared for. But she also couldn't forget the fear he had caused or the nights spent looking over her shoulder. Therapy became an essential part of her recovery. Talking to professionals helped her piece together her emotions and understand the complex mix of fear, relief, and sorrow she felt. Mark also faced his own battles. He found it difficult to return to a normal life after the intense stress and fear. The memory of that night in the cabin haunted him, especially the moment when he realized his actions had ended a young man's life. Friends and neighbors showed support, but Mark often felt isolated by the experience. The role of protector had come at a steep price. The trial sparked widespread conversations in their town and beyond about stalking and obsessive behavior. Local authorities promised to improve their response to such cases, acknowledging the failures that had left Emily vulnerable for so long. Laws were reviewed, and victim support programs received more attention and funding. Emily and Mark became quiet advocates for these changes, hoping to prevent others from enduring similar nightmares. Still, the emotional aftermath lingered. Emily avoided social media and public spaces where she once felt free. Mark, too, was more cautious, always watching out for signs that someone might be watching or waiting. They leaned heavily on each other, finding strength in their shared experience, but also recognizing the need to rebuild their lives apart from the shadows of the past. Their story remained a cautionary tale about the dangers of obsession and the limits of the law in protecting victims. It highlighted how quickly love can turn into something dark and destructive, and how far a parent might go to protect their child. It also revealed the complexity of human emotions, how fear, love, anger, and guilt can coexist in painful ways. In the quiet moments, Emily sometimes wondered what could have been different. If Ryan had sought help earlier, or if the system had acted sooner, maybe the nightmare would have been avoided. But those questions had no answers. What mattered now was survival and moving forward, one step at a time. Mark and Emily's lives would never be the same. The scars they carried were invisible but deeply felt. Yet in their pain, they found resilience. They chose to honor the past by creating a safer future, for themselves and for others, caught in the grip of obsession and fear. Their story was tragic, but it was also a testament to the power of love, courage, and the will to protect those we hold dear.